Rob, okay, as I said, we grew up in the Stockway pens because it was fantastic to meet all the farmers of the district there. And then
This is when you were kids.
we were kids from, I mean, 7 years old. We had to see that we had every stock fair that we could,
Yeah.
attend. And being there, then you meet people at different levels of of their business.
Yeah.
Now, there's one classic story, and which to me always stands out. Uncle Max Kruan, he always had pen 15, and then he now sourced the best sheep out of the Kruan family. All their properties right now, once a month now, bring just 15 sheep to pen 15,
Yeah.
not more.
Yeah.
And but what Uncle Max didn't know, my dad them had problems with one of the buyers. He hadn't paid for 3 months worth of stock that he bought.
Now this is Paul Brothers.
Paul Brothers.
Yeah.
So the agreement was that the auctioneer would not take his bids because they don't want to end up with a bigger
Yeah.
dead book. But Uncle Max wasn't aware of this. So what this buyer does, he gets to this pen of Hummels, they're beautiful, and he bids, in those days, say, the top price for Hummel used to be, say, 7 Rand. He bids 6 Rand 50, and the auctioneer ignores him. So the next bid from someone else from Janssenville, the guy bids 6 Rand 75, and yeah, this buyer stands up, I'll give you 7 Rand 50. And the auctioneer is now at a disadvantage because what does he do in this case? So he says, no, there's no sale. I can't take your bid. Sorry, I can't take that bid. Uncle Max is in the crawl with his suit and tie, and he's upset. And normally any farmer would be upset because, I mean, this is the top price.
Yeah.
And now he says he's never coming, somewhere in the crawl, he loses his cool and he says he's never bringing stock to Paul Brothers auctioneer. So my dad waits till he steps out the crawl and he calls him to the side and he says, Uncle Max, you can take that sale privately. You can get that buyer to buy your stock privately, but we can't do that. So my dad leaves it at that, and they go on with the sale. But now Max is now, with people hearing this now, the rest of the farming fraternity sort of worried. Why are these people not taking the highest bid? So that whole sale sort of dwindles to actually a very bad sale for Paul Brothers because people don't know what's the story behind it. But the long and the short of it, a month later, the next sale, Uncle Max is back. But he stops the whole sale and he says he just wants to correct something. He sold those things personally to the buyer. Until today, he hasn't received his money. So
But that's very big of him. I mean, that's
well, that was a
magnanimous.
recognition of a mistake he'd made. But that's the sort of thing at the sale. You as a seller don't know all the background of people buying or bidding on your stock, and you can make the wrong assumption if your bid isn't being taken or the buyer's bid isn't being taken. That was one thing. And then you will remember, Rob, the cattle sales were, after the small stock, and my brother and myself, we were given instruction to help with chasing cattle in from various
What
sales.
age would you have been then?
From 11, 12, 13. We grew up in stables, so we could work with cattle and Now we, the two brothers, myself and my brother, we knew if it was Uncle Bob and Flippy's cattle, they were damn wild because they came, they came from Namibia. And I mean, you could never think that the animal would run into a train railing and break that railing. The animal was dead, obviously, but with that force, it wanted to run into you too if you were in its way.
Yeah.
So we were like Fred Astaire, the two of us. If those cattle came in, you were either on top of the fence or on the other side of the fence, but never in the crop. And then the older gentleman would shout, "Ja in, ja in," and then I mean, it was just by pure miracle and chance that these animals would, if you open the gate, might take that avenue, because the gates were also wrongly placed in those two crawls before the sail ring. They were not in the corner; they were sort of in the middle of the crawl. So,
Yes.
and no animal that's under pressure will go in the middle. I mean, they're looking for the corner to go. So, I mean, that was one aspect. And then there was another aspect. Aubrey Goethals was a tall man like yourself, and he brought some nice cattle from Bushmanshoek, and they were fat. And again, the buyers were playing, they actually formed a ring where they decide one guy buys the oxen, one buys the cows, one guy buys the bulls, and then they share it afterwards. And the farmers knew this was happening. And Aubrey is dressed in a suit, beautiful brown suit, I'll never forget it. And he's got these 4 Guernsey oxen. They fat for Guernsey oxen. They in the ring. They must have been 3 years old, so they're well grown out. And he wants 25 rand per animal, and they're bidding 18, 19 rand. And he says, "Chaps, look at these beautiful oxen. They come out of the prickly pear. Look how fat they are." And he slaps one ox on the hindquarter, and this ox, the reaction is it scours, and it meets the old man just below the tie button, and his whole suit is full of muck. And he didn't say a word. He just got over the fence, got into the vehicle, and he buggered off. And the oxen, I think the oxen went 21 rand, which he then accepted without making a murmur further, because he wasn't there. That sort of stuff. Yeah. And then my dad, and actually my grandfather, when he lived, he said there must be a section to sell pigs, and my father then could never understand why pigs. But my grandfather knew all the farmers' wives had a few pigs.
Yes.
And if the farmer's wife can bring her produce to sell, then the husband, although he supports Watermeyer, he'll also bring a few stock, because the expense is the same.
Yes.
And okay, Watermeyer followed later on. My father then built those, the pens for pigs, and obviously it became a very big thing, because then we had people like Reg Holmes them, and Denny Murray, and all those people. They reared pigs, and they brought them beautiful pigs. But the origination was because of the women folk having pigs. There were many things that took place in that, at those sale yards. And then, obviously, then my father, then, because he had the experience of going to the Rand show with cattle and stuff, he wanted to, at one time a year, just give recognition to people that had always brought quality stock. So the December sale was now the showcase sale. And then you'd find people like Flip Murray, then bring those beautiful hummels from Prince Albert, which you don't see that often, where the whole pen of hummels, the average weight was, say, 85 kilos. And beautifully turned out. And then people brought beautiful dorper lambs and ewes and boer goats. And it was wonderful times for a youngster to grow up and just see how people did business. I mean, yeah, uh, it was a great learning school or learning curve for any youngster that took note. And then the other thing is the stockmanship that you see. And I mean, you take the farms in the district that weren't the best farms, but that person that farmed that property always brought beautiful stock from that farm. And subsequently, other people have bought the farms, but they haven't been able to ever produce the same quality stock. And the question I pose is, was it stockmanship? Or did he know the camps better? Did he know the grazing better? There are various things that play a role. But
It was
yeah,
very interesting to me. I mean, okay, I was farming already, but standing next to somebody like John Allen Biggs, when he was bidding, and I forget who he was talking. He wasn't talking to me. I was just overhearing what he said, and he said, "No, those are Snowberg sheep. They're not going to slaughter out the same percentage as the sheep from the flats." That's interesting. The sheep looks nice and it's got the same weight as that, but you're not going to get as much carcass weight out. Such an interesting thing.
Yeah. And I mean, only a butcher will know that.
Yeah.
We as ordinary folk will stand next to the pen and say, but there's a pen of 42 kilo lambs, and he has a pen of 42 now. What's the difference really? But only a butcher will know. That comes from Snowberg, and this comes from the flats, and you'd rather buy these.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And they were, I mean, Angora goats had a fantastic spell in the 70s till, I think 91. And in 91, I think, was about the last year that we actually had sales at Paul Brothers. And now with that slump, a lady brought 20 fowls to come and sell also on the side. And that day, the fowls went 7 rand, and the top Angoras went 5 rand.
I remember that.
And that was shocking. I mean, we used to fight against O'Connell Miller and those people in Janssenville to buy a few kapatas, 2-tooth kapatas, and we'd swear we're not going to pay more than 60 rand per kapata. Then with John from BKB and Collie Miller, they cooked the thing so that they stand there and they bid against you till 70 rand, then they buy all the kapatas. And those same kapatas went less than pounds when Maui slept. And you can't from that high think that, these animals can lose so much value. Yeah.
It was hard.
It was hard.
It was a hard time to farm because there was that massive drought.
Yes. 91, 92, 3.
Yeah.
But that is just a few stories. I would not want to go into a lot of stories.
I'll switch it off for a moment.
Then
give you a chance to drink your coffee.
I must tell this. What also made Paul Brothers a fantastic business is my grandfather and father had connections in the Southern Cape by the name of Polly van Rensburg and PM van Rensburg. They used to travel from George every month to come and buy stock here. But what people didn't know is that PM and Polly were far relations of my grandfather.
Okay.
And they had a loyalty, and especially when PM. But I'm not going to imitate his voice.
Okay.
So after a sale, then he now bought a lot of stock, but he must load a few stock on his bakkie to George. And we say to him, when PM, you don't have to do that. And he says, but it saves him some money. So because he's using the petrol, and so I'm about 15 and Richard 14. Now we get tasked, we must load a Friesland bull, a pig, and 2 rams on a Toyota bakkie. It hasn't got high railings.
What?
It hasn't got the. There are 2 rims there that we must tie the bull first around the neck onto the rail, the sheep rail, and then we must make a plan, put another rim around its body. But he has to get this bull, it has to be slaughtered there. It took us really right up to 8 o'clock at night to get the bull to lie. We had to tie him so that he went to go and lie down, put the pig on and the 2 rams, and only then did the old man. But he took that load to George. En hy sê, nee my boetie, jy moet maar net bietjie harder draai. Daai bil, ek laai by elke van die se bil en 'n vark en 2 ramme, jy moet ook nou dit doen. Sê ek, jy oom PM, die bil gaan afspring. Hy sal nie afspring, as jy dit reg doen, gaan hy nie afspring nie. That's, you know, things like that, people can't tell. It was just, yeah, things like that, I mean. Flip Murray used to bring us hammels, but he put pellets on the lorry, eventually it was a Oshkosh, but prior to that, any lorry, he throw the whole deck full of pellets. So those sheep get on 4 o'clock at Prince Albert.
And they eat.
And they eat. And okay, they mess, and at the end, they don't eat there, but they eat on the way, yeah. And then when they offload, they drink water. There was this long trough there. Yeah. I don't know if you can remember this.
I don't remember everything.
Yeah, then all those hammels would just come and stand there and drink, and with the pellets inside them, they'd blow up. And then it would be even more impressive. Yeah. But,
interesting.
Yeah, but I just say there were so many tricks people wanted to achieve, you know, bring their stock, they want to be the best.
And it was sort of it was a bit of a social event as well, wasn't it? You know, those who didn't have something to sell sometimes would just be there to just come and see what's going on.
Yeah, well, you'd come and have a look at this sale to know what's going to happen at Watermaze on the 15th.
Or you've got some stock at home that you want to sell out of hands.
And then it gives you a guideline what more to expect, more or less. But what was interesting, we spoke to bank managers, and they always said it was fantastic to know that there's every third Wednesday of the month there's a sale. Excuse me, and every second every
2 weeks apart. Yeah,
2 weeks apart every second. But I knew that there would be, if the farmer comes in and he's got a bit of finance, then he says to the guy, I'm taking stock to the stock fair, and then that money would arrive. They could sort of bargain on that. Now today, we're fortunate we've got Willie Gous and his business and various other ways of, but this was sort of the internal thing in Graafnet's economy, is that these 2 sales would take place.
Well, those wild cattle of Flippies. I saw that when he was much younger than though, still, he would stand in the kraal with those cattle. He obviously was used to them.
Yeah. But it's you know when the animal's going to come right at you.
You can see in the eyes.
Yeah, you can know this one. But they were just too fast always. Yeah, it's just, you just never knew. I mean, they would never just go and stand still. They'd move all the time. That whole kraal would be milling, and they'd shout, bring 2 in, then bring 2 in. And it was, interesting times. There were various, I mean, the auctioneers also had their own way of, everyone had their own identity of auctioning.
I can't remember who did the auctioneering for Paul.
Look, it used to, first it was out John Rautenbach.
Yeah.
And then there was a young guy, he came here from the Northern Cape. We had him for a short while. Can't remember his surname. He was very good. And then Uncle Ronnie Slobbert was the auctioneer for us.
For a long time.
Yeah, for a long time. But with Uncle Ronnie, we had a young guy that became a fantastic auctioneer in the rest of South Africa by the name of Yanni Hugo.
Okay.
He came from Marlow, his history, or Richmond, grew up in Richmond, played rugby for Marlow and played rugby for Northeastern Cape senior side, scrum half, and he was an auctioneer. And then he went from us to Vleis Centraal in Mafeking, and then he did Freiburg and all those places.